We arrived in the Amazon to document the folklore and legends of the rainforest tribes. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, an adventure deep into the wild, far from civilization. Our team consisted of me, my best friend Alex, and our guide, a wiry, middle-aged man named Miguel who grew up in one of the indigenous villages. He spoke little English but enough Portuguese to get us by, and his eyes always seemed to carry a shadow of caution. "You must listen to the forest," he told us on our first day. "And never wander off the path. The rainforest is alive, full of spirits and creatures older than we can imagine." We laughed it off as superstition. We were there to film a documentary, not buy into ghost stories. But Miguel never laughed, and every evening, when we made camp, he would murmur prayers and scatter leaves blessed by his village's shaman around our tents. "Protection," he explained. Our fourth night in the jungle was a humid, suffocating nightmare. The air was thick with moisture, buzzing with the calls of insects and the distant hoot of howler monkeys. We sat around our fire, drinking warm beer from cans and talking about nothing in particular, when Miguel suddenly stiffened. His hand shot up, silencing us, and his dark eyes narrowed as he stared into the jungle. "What is it?" Alex asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Miguel didn't answer right away. He seemed to be listening for something, his whole body tense. Finally, he muttered something in Portuguese, his voice tight with fear. "What did he say?" I whispered. Miguel turned to us, his face pale. "We need to put out the fire," he said. "And we must stay silent. Very silent." "What? Why?" I asked, feeling a shiver creep up my spine. He pointed to the dark trees. "Cuca," he whispered. "The witch. She comes at night for the disobedient, the ones who don't respect the forest." Alex rolled his eyes. "Come on, man. You can't be serious." But Miguel was deadly serious. He leaned over and doused the fire with dirt, plunging us into near darkness. The only light came from our headlamps, which he quickly gestured for us to turn off. The jungle swallowed us, and suddenly, I felt exposed, like the trees themselves were watching. "What the hell is a cuca?" I whispered, my breath shallow. Miguel's voice was barely more than a breath. "An old witch. Sometimes a crocodile woman, sometimes a shadow with long, bony fingers. She takes what she wants. Children. People who disobey. She is the mother of nightmares." The jungle had gone unnervingly quiet. No more insects, no rustling leaves, only a heavy, unnatural stillness. I felt the air thicken, pressing in on me from all sides. My hands were shaking. And then we heard it, a lullaby. Soft, almost beautiful, but sung in a voice that sounded cracked and old, like branches snapping underfoot. It drifted through the trees, echoing in that unsettling way that makes you question your sanity. My blood ran cold. "What the fuck is that?" Alex hissed, panic breaking through his bravado. Miguel's eyes widened. "Don't move," he mouthed. The lullaby grew louder, sweeter, yet more disturbing, like a mother singing to her baby in a cradle woven from human bones. I tried to steady my breathing, to make no noise, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure she would hear it. Then came the footsteps. Slow and heavy, like something dragging itself through the underbrush. Leaves crunched, and something wet and slick moved across the ground. The sound came closer, circling us, and I realized I could smell it, the reek of rot and something reptilian, something old and festering. A shape emerged from the shadows, tall and hunched, with long, bony arms that ended in gnarled, clawed fingers. Her hair was a tangled mass of moss and dead leaves, her face half hidden but twisted in a grin that made my skin crawl. Her eyes glinted yellow in the darkness, and I realized, with a stomach-turning sense of horror, that she had no pupils. Just yellow, predatory eyes, glowing like a predator's. It was the Cuca. "Who disrespects my forest," she crooned, her voice both soft and full of malice. Her lips split into a smile that stretched too far, showing jagged, broken teeth. "Who dares wake the sleeping shadows?" Alex couldn't take it. He bolted, his fear overriding any sense of survival. "Fuck this," he screamed, running blindly into the trees. "Alex, no!" I shouted, but he was already gone, his footsteps crashing through the jungle. The Cuca's head snapped in his direction, and she moved faster than anything that size should be able to, gliding through the underbrush with a predatory grace. The lullaby twisted into a cackle, echoing through the trees. "Stay here," Miguel hissed, but I was already running after Alex. I couldn't leave him. My heart pounded, and branches whipped at my face, but the jungle felt endless, a labyrinth that wanted to swallow me whole. "Alex!" I screamed, stumbling over roots and vines. The laughter grew louder, sharper, cutting through the night. I found him in a small clearing, his back against a tree, eyes wide with terror. The Cuca stood over him, her long fingers brushing his cheek. She whispered something in that broken, melodic voice, and Alex's face went slack, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. "Get away from him!" I yelled, adrenaline surging through me. I grabbed a large branch from the ground and swung it at her. She turned to me, her grin widening, and with one swipe of her clawed hand, she knocked me back. The branch fell from my hands, and I hit the ground hard, the air rushing from my lungs. Pain exploded in my chest, and I struggled to breathe. "Foolish boy," she murmured, her voice echoing. "Do you think you can defy me?" Alex's body twitched, and his eyes rolled back. Blood began to trickle from his nose, his ears, and I realized with dawning horror that she was taking him, draining him somehow, feeding on his life. I tried to move, but my limbs felt like lead. The Cuca loomed over me, her shadow stretching, enveloping everything. Her eyes burned into mine, and I could feel the darkness creeping in, the edges of my vision blurring. "Enough," a voice roared, and suddenly, Miguel appeared, holding a bundle of herbs alight with a brilliant flame. He shouted words in his native tongue, words that crackled and sparked, filling the air with the scent of burning leaves. The Cuca hissed, her form twisting, melting into shadow. Her laughter echoed one last time before she vanished, leaving behind only the suffocating smell of rot. I gasped, the weight lifting from my chest, and crawled to Alex. He was pale, his skin clammy, but he was breathing. Barely. Miguel knelt beside us, his hands steady but his face stricken with fear. "We must leave. Now." We made it back to the village just as dawn broke, the sky stained with the promise of a new day. Alex was taken to the local healer, but he never truly recovered. His eyes remained hollow, haunted, and he never spoke of that night again. Miguel warned me that the Cuca was not easily defeated, that her forest still hungered for those who dared disrespect it. I left the Amazon with more than just footage for our documentary. I left with nightmares, the lullaby echoing in my mind, and the memory of her eyes, glowing yellow in the dark.